Okay. I'd like to order, please.
They both turn on. All right. It's a big room with a lot of people.
Okay. Okay, I'm calling this meeting of the Board of Trustees order. It's now 5:17. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda?
I don't think the mic is on. I can't hear you back here. There's something going on.
No, it's not. Okay. We are to order. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda?
Move approval.
I second it. Who is that? Me. Okay.
You got that, Sean.
Okay, do any of the board members have any potential conflicts of interest?
Mic's not working.
It is working. We don't have a super microphone in this space, so we'll do our best.
Okay, announcements. Thank you everyone for your interest in the library. This is a public meeting, not a public hearing. So in an effort to allow the board to complete our agenda, we'll be setting some time constraints on public input, and public comment time has been moved to after continuing business on the agenda for tonight. So I don't know if Zoom is going to be working or not. When it does come time to comment, we're asking commenters to direct their questions or comments to the chair, and their comments will be timed, and the amount allotted at this point is 3 minutes per speaker. And okay. Oops. Next item of business. The consent agenda was in the minutes of the November 10th regular meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Move approval.
A second. Who second? Was that you?
Let's be sure we do our all in favor of these two.
Oh, I didn't get it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Now we move to reports. First is Friends of the Library.
I use the mic because I'm recovering from laryngitis. Otherwise, you would get my big voice, but it's a little rough today. So just reporting on the Friends of the Library. They are doing great. They are working on just their Christmas gift book sale right now. So as you enter the front of the library, you'll see a wonderful display of items that the Friends have hand curated for your holiday shopping enjoyment. All the proceeds from Friends of the Library sales does come back to the library to support our programming. We are very grateful for the ongoing support of the Friends. You feel good about the microphone?
Can everyone hear me? Okay. No? Okay. Apparently I get the microphone. Okay. Circulation services report for December. So under what's happening, we just wanted to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of our Words on Wheels program. It was a program we created to fulfill the library's mission by offering services to eligible residents who are homebound. It's an opportunity to reflect on the learning opportunities this type of outreach provided staff and determine the next steps in moving forward. Similar to a bookmobile, this program allows the library to take materials to the patrons. With a schedule of regular deliveries, we used marketing campaigns through social media, flyers posted on bulletin boards, and we were able to coordinate with the senior center via their Meals on Wheels program, and that allowed us to reach a wide audience. We recently added another patron to our roster and are looking to expand into the senior facility assisted living arenas. And for the record, for comparing new patrons from 2019, we had added 61 new patrons. In 2020, of course, you can obviously see where the pandemic hit. We dropped down to 38. And then as we were recovering in 2021, we were able to raise that up to 83. And then for November this year, we added 104 new patrons. into the system. So the rest of the statistics is just highs and lows for checkouts that happen at the self-check, at the front counter, and check-ins. There wasn't really anything remarkable about any of those statistics, but we do average 140 items on the hold shelf, and those are just items sitting there waiting for people to come pick them up. And of course, incoming crates, items that are coming in from the Deschutes and Jefferson system, we're averaging about 6 crates a day. And that was pretty much it for the circulation report. Are there any questions?
Cindy, in the months since, I'll hold it for you. Okay, in the months since August, I think you mentioned we were getting over 100 new library cards issued every month. Has that been?
Yes, so we have been adding at least 100 new patrons every month. Since August, we added 106 new patrons. September, we added 107. October, we added 123. And then of course, November was 104.
Thanks. Go, Sean.
All right, so this is the public service report. Our public service team has been busy. Just some updates. We have our winter reading program, which will start on Saturday, December 10th, and run through January 3rd. This is kind of like a smaller version of summer reading. We're going to do bingo cards and offer, you can get prizes. Our Ready to Read grant has been reported to the state, and this grant report demonstrates the impact the Ready to Read grant has in supporting our early literacy efforts and summer reading. And just to highlight some of the facts from the report, early literacy, we served over 900 kids and 230 adults. We work with over 8 community partners, and we recently just purchased 13 new early literacy kits and new furniture for the kids' room. And it also supports our summer reading, which this past summer we served over 900 kids, teens, and adults. We offered 39 programs with over 608 attendees. So as for our programming outreach, like I said, they've been very busy. Youth programming has been going well. Over the last 2 months, we've hosted 11 programs with over 187 kids attending. Our outreach for youth continues to grow, and this also includes supporting the dual language family night, which we supported by 75 bags filled with 3 books, learning materials that were passed out to parents and their children. Teen services is going well. They had, so one thing that we did try to do this time is we try to experiment with teen services on Saturday, see if we can gather just a different group of kids that might not be there. It worked out well. We were able to reach a different audience. So we've been experimenting with that. Outreach has continued to grow with our teen services, including the middle school, high school, Powell Butte Charter School, and Paulina School. Our teen librarian has been able to provide programs, information on library services, and schedule information literacy classes, which has been really helpful to get out and show them our online resources. And starting on November 7th, we've been doing a teen survey to gather information on what the teens want and what they're interested in. And that's been going really strong. We've got over 70 results, participants in the survey, which is, that's a huge victory for us. And again, adult services, we're offering a variety of programs from tech to arts and crafts. We just hosted a Prineville native speaker, Bert DeVore, who just released his 2nd novel, which was really interesting. And our English classes in partnership with the Latinos Community Association just finished up for the season. We were able to get averaging 12 people per class. And it worked. It was so successful. We're booked for next take-home semester. So during the winter time, we have that planned, and then we're already planning computer and English classes for the springtime with them. And lastly, we've been working with some new partners, Cornerstone Housing, who offers services to Section 8 housing throughout Prineville. So we're going to be working with them to bring our resources to their different locations. And then also we've been working with Snap Ed to come up with some healthy programs that we can start working with them as well. And we have a lot of big things planned for 2023.
Thanks.
Oh, any questions?
Any questions for Sean? I am turning my sound off. If you haven't done the same, here's your moment to take your phone out and turn off the ringer. Feel like we need the movie theater announcement. Great, thank you, Sean and Cindy, for sharing those. We'll move into my director's report. So I generally highlight anything that's going on with the building itself. So we've had some ongoing sagas with our HVAC system, but we're almost there. We're almost there. We've got our Wi-Fi thermostats installed, and we found out that one of the furnaces wasn't actually connected, and this, that, and the other thing, but we are warm in the winter, and so that is what matters. The facilities team is able to control our thermostats via Wi-Fi, set a regular schedule, and then library staff still has the ability to fine-tune temperatures at each of the thermostats. One thing that I'm really excited about is we're going to be getting some new lighting in the main portion of the library. So if you walk through the main adult section of the library right now, it can be really dim in the winter. We are going to be getting some lighting that will actually now downcast light instead of shoot it right up into the big atrium, highlighting all the cobwebs. So instead, facilities has located some lamps for us. There's one little ring lamp up right now that you can kind of see the difference that just one lamp makes. And we anticipate that those fittings will happen probably by the end of the calendar year, although, you know, things shift and change as far as facility stuff goes. But you can anticipate a brighter library in 2023. I also like to touch on anything that's related to technology that's been going on at the library, especially because we did receive such a significant grant from Facebook back in 2019. So we continue to be good stewards of those funds and look for different ways to bring technology tools and items to our community. So the most recent project we've completed is updating our loanable telescopes. Did you know you can check out telescope from the library? Oh, so many surprises, so many surprises. So we now have two very nice Orion StarMax 90mm tabletop telescopes. They're in a bag. It comes with a star chart and a headlamp, which I thought was a genius idea from Sean, because if you're using a telescope in the middle of the night, maybe you want to see what you're doing. So Sean was like, let's put telescopes in the kit. Smart. Library's in good hands, guys. So those are available right now. If you would like to check out a telescope, you just let us know at the front desk. We have you sign a little bit of a waiver because it is some costly information or costly product, but after that, it is yours to use. And it's just one example of some of the surprising things that we offer here at the library. So as many of you know, I have my last day at Crook County Library tomorrow. I am not going to cry right now. I will cry later and I will cry tomorrow. So I just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about what the interim looks like. So both Cindy and Sean will be serving in interim capacities. We've submitted task lists that each of them will be kind of assigned to as the interim progresses. My position is currently posted as active and accepting applications at this point in time. So that being said, I just wanted to take a moment to highlight a few of the projects and accomplishments from my 2 years here in Crook County. So first of all, I just have to recognize that this library did significant work making it through the pandemic. We reorganized staffing, building hours, the capacity of people that we could hold, kept on top of all safety precautions as they were rolled out. We implemented a well-used curbside service and launched book bundles, a service that continues on now that we are back to regular operations. Our librarians continue to offer all kinds of programming through virtual events and a bunch of make and take kits. I've never seen so many brown bags leave a library in my life. It was an incredibly successful way for us to engage with our patrons at a time when we couldn't do regular programming. Throughout the past 2 years, as many other organizations in town and regionally and across the country have experienced, we had a lot of short staffing. To the point where we were right on the cusp of having to potentially make some tough decisions about closure hours, specifically on the weekends. That being said, we put our heads together and figured out ways to make it work. Sometimes that meant that on a Saturday, just nobody could leave the building because it wasn't safe. So you had to have like a minimum number of bodies here to kind of have everybody's back, but we made it through that. We all pitched in and made it work until we could breathe a sigh of relief. So during those processes, I served on the hiring committees for a teen services librarian, welcome Katie to the library, a public services manager, welcome Sean, a customer services specialist, that's Kayla Roden, and a new library aide, which is Amaris Newby. So that's a huge amount of turnover here. A lot of hiring happened, and we really got to engage all of our staff in the hiring process, which was really great. It's nice to have library staff on interview committees just to get the experience of what it takes to bring somebody new on board. And it just kind of brings you all together when you go through that process. As far as technology initiatives, just a little bit of reiteration on the Facebook technology grant. That money arrived, we got a great new outreach van, and then screech, everything came to a halt. So when I came on board in November of 2020, we had the opportunity to kind of look at that money, see what the mission of the grant was, and we were able to begin ordering the technology that was intended for the use of that grant. So the library now has a full mobile technology setup. That is a kit of 10 laptops along with all the peripherals and 10 tablets. And now these classroom sets are able to leave the building in big, fancy, supportive cases, and we can take our technology on the road. And that is something that Sean and his team will really be putting their heads together for in the new year. We can use the mobile technology lab here in the library. So we've had a handful of computer classes where we've been able to already use the mobile tech lab. And it's just been a really exciting thing to know that we have the opportunity to spread technology and kind of breach the barriers to access that some of our community members in Crook County experience when it comes to technology. We created circulating technology kits. Right now, the bulk of those kits are Wi-Fi hotspots that our library patrons can check out. This is another incredible service that we can offer in a place where not everybody is guaranteed to have a solid connection at work or at home. So our Wi-Fi hotspots are always checked out. There's usually always a wait list. And we've learned a lot about what it takes to circulate something like a library hotspot. It's something that a lot of libraries are doing now. So there's a big knowledge, a big growth of knowledge in that area, but still it's like, okay, if that doesn't come back, how do we shut it off? If we shut it off, does that guarantee the thing will come back? Oh, it's been a lot, but I feel like we're in a really good spot with that right now. And the feedback from our patrons who use those devices is really, really powerful. I mean, people finding housing, people getting jobs because now they have access to the internet in a more stable manner. I just wanted to highlight that we are nearing the end of our strategic plan. Our current strategic plan runs up through 2024. And at this point, Sean and I just recently have done a little bit of an audit. He'll share more of that in the new year. But we are reaching to hit nearly every goal and outcome of that strategic plan. A little fine tuning still to come, but that feels really great as we move forward to 2024 and think about the next strategic planning process here. That the next iteration of library leadership will move into. We did a great job meeting a lot of those goals with a couple things still to come. We did some grant management at the library during my time here. So we received an ARPA grant, which increased our Spanish language access here at the library through bilingual signage, bilingual maps, getting a lot of our library policy, procedures, and documentation translated into Spanish. Just doing what we can to kind of, again, the barriers to access and use of the library within our community. We have public art in the front now as you came in. If you haven't been to the library in a minute, there's a cool salmon sculpture out in our front octagonal planter. This is thanks to the Crook County Foundation who got, it's a fire pit. We took the fire pit out because we can't have a fire in front of the library, but it's one of the Winterfest fire pits that happens at Winterfest in Bend, and then Crook County Foundation had won a bid on the salmon sculpture, and then they offered to place that in a place where a lot of people can enjoy it, and so that's the front of the library. We have done a lot of work with the board over the past couple of years to update our policies. We have updated collection development policy, technology policies, patron code of conduct. We revised board bylaws and more. So kind of the not so exciting part of being a library director and a board member is dealing with policy. So we did a lot of that the past couple of years. Cindy mentioned that we have launched a couple new initiatives since I've been here. Words on Wheels has been really great. I'm continually impressed by the way that library staff here tunes into what the community needs or sees an idea from another library and then brings those forward, and our team and our management here has been able to figure out what's going to work here? What do we try? What do we abandon in, you know, the need to find something else? And I just anticipate that that learning and that service will continue once I have left. We reinvigorated our library volunteer program, which has been really exciting. Renee Perot has been an incredible addition to the volunteer crew. So thanks to Renee for finding meaningful work for our volunteers that then supports the library and how we need to just make it through every day. We have done a really nice refresh of the children's library. That was a big pandemic project, making that space more accessible, more usable, bringing in modern furniture, adding some fun new touches. So we just got a new sofa and a nice new rocker in the children's room. So it's really feeling like, even since I've arrived, a really different space, which is really exciting. And then last but not least, I just wanted to add on that in my time here in Crook County, I participated in a couple of community organizations such as Rotary, and the Crook County Foundation, a couple of special committees with them. So it's been my pleasure to be here and to work in service of Crook County, to get engaged with community members, and just always being curious and looking for those ways to move this library forward. When I applied for this position, it was because as I was in Deschutes Public, I had seen the great things going here, and I was really excited to come join this team. And that gut feeling, that knowledge was exactly correct. And it's just been an absolute honor to work beside everybody here. And I know that they have got great steps to move forward. And I'll just be kind of watching from my new position and checking in. And that's the great thing now, is that I've got the connections here. So I don't plan on being a stranger. So those were some of the things I wanted to highlight from my time here. Thanks, everybody. You want to do some stats?
Yeah.
I feel like a bingo caller.
Yeah.
So financials board were not available yet. So when November's financials are released, given the interim situation, the board meeting in January, we will just try to get caught up with finances as much as we can. We did invite the finance team over to come and chat with management team and just make sure that we had kind of all of our things in the right order, and we were aware of what processes were coming, given that the budgeting system, or the budgeting program, will begin in January. We will be delivering a mid-year budget report, as will all of the other department heads. Those will be public meetings held across a variety of days in January. So that's a great opportunity to kind of share our progress. So if you have questions leading up to January and you're like, oh, I really need those financials from November, just let Cindy or Sean know, because I'm guessing they'll be released like tomorrow, probably. So if they do come out tomorrow, I'll try to email them out. Otherwise, you can just anticipate seeing some more financials in the next board packet. Yeah, don't worry, you're not missing them because they're not in there.
I was looking for my.
Oh, okay, great. Then as far as statistics go, I think the information that Cindy highlighted as far as our new card holders is really exciting. November can kind of just be a slower month in general. So you see that reflected in some of our stats. Our foot traffic is down a little bit. But despite foot traffic coming down, we're still seeing that number of new library cards created, which is really exciting. We're seeing pretty consistent use of our website. Our ebook checkouts are really consistent. We're averaging around 20 new Overdrive users a month. And other than that, I just wanted to point out that this month we held 92 meetings in the rooms here at the library. 90 is a pretty solid number, and that's just really great that we're able to offer this space in the Juniper room and our study room. As many of you know, it's very difficult to find a community meeting space that's free in Crook County, and so offering this space is one of the really great things that we have going on here for us. So other than that, I didn't know if there were other questions about statistics or anything else that you'd want me to highlight from that part of the packet.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I remain confused about the self-checkout ratio, the way it's reported, because more books are self-checkout than at the desk. But 40% makes it read like less, or?
Do you want to talk to that, Sean? Because he played around with the formulas a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Give me 1 second.
Do you think maybe the formula didn't carry into November?
Yes, actually, because so there was an error that we found in one of the formulas that it was pulling from a different box. And so we found the error, we fixed it. I think you brought it up a couple board meetings ago.
I'm trying to figure out the math.
Yes, no, and you know what, and the math doesn't add right, so I think that error in the formula came back.
Okay.
So that's probably why it doesn't actually add up right.
Okay.
So that
Well,
is
looks like we're checking out a lot of books. I like that.
Bottom line.
yeah, so that's something I will look into tomorrow morning.
Other questions about statistics, finances, anything like that?
So,
Okay. Madam Chair.
Okay, where are we now?
Continuing
Continuing business. Now, April, are you going to give the updates on material? Now, are we going to? Do you want to read the thing from the court first?
I'll do that leading up to public comment.
Okay.
So I can read the proposal information.
Okay,
First.
read the proposal.
Essentially for continuing business, continuing on from the November board meeting, I was asked to create a proposal related to the presence of LGBTQ+ materials in our children's collection. So this is coming from community concern about these materials and their placement in the library. And so what we have done now is essentially created two proposals. So I'll read the text of the first one for you. So proposal number 1, creating a juvenile LGBTQ special collection. Location, current location of the juvenile audiobooks at the front of the children's room is where we see this collection going. As we'll touch on later, this collection does need to be accessible and visible. And because of you know, the number of books not being big, not being small, kind of being in the middle, this is the best location for it up at the front of the library. And then we would move the audiobooks to join the rest of the audiovisual materials, which are back near the storytime area. The contents of this special collection would be books, both fiction and nonfiction, containing themes and/or characters that identify as members of or pertain to the LGBTQ+ community and its history. The process for selecting these titles, CCL librarians will review catalog subject headings relevant to the above contents to select currently existing items in the collection for relocation. Future purchases will use professional reviews as well as catalog headings present in OCLC WorldCat, which is the big library catalog that public libraries get a lot of their records from. We'll be using catalog headings there to inform whether placement in the special collection is appropriate for new materials coming into the library. Wayfinding and identification. A new location code will be created in accordance with existing naming standards in the Tri-County catalog. So essentially that means it would be Prineville, Juvenile, LGBTQ collection or something like that. This new location code will be a pre-stamp for new spine labels. So essentially a new spine label will need to be created with this location. And the spine label would also include standard library call numbers such as author name, Dewey Decimal Number, etc. An additional label will be applied to the materials to give a visual cue to the new location. General shelf signage will be created to inform patrons of the collection. So that is pretty much the entirety of the proposal that we have that would guide making the special collection. Does the board have any questions about that proposal? Okay. So then proposal number 2, juvenile LGBTQ items remain interfiled. This would be status quo. No changes made to items with LGBTQ+ themes, characters, etc. These items will remain in their current locations in the juvenile collection with no additional labeling. Library staff and library board will closely monitor statistics in the upcoming calendar year to keep abreast of any impact attributed to not creating a special collection, such as decrease in visits, decrease in circulation, etc. All current policy and procedure remains in place to receive patron feedback on library collections, such as our request for reconsideration form and our suggestion for purchase. The one little bit of text that I didn't include in here is that one way or the other, the library is interested in increasing education around library use for juveniles. So we are anticipating creating a small handout that will be given to parents when they sign up their children for a library card. We're hoping to have a draft of this handout ready to preview for the board in January. This would essentially be, so parents or guardians right now are signing off on a child's library card. That means that they have set up a PIN number that lets them get access to the account online through our online portal that would let them see what items are checked out. The library card number and PIN are also useful if a parent needs to check in on other library use, such as digital books, etc. This handout will also let parents and guardians know how they can fine tune settings on library products, such as Overdrive for audiobooks, ebooks, etc., and Hoopla, which we use for streaming services. So both of these are apps that you have to actually download to a personal device in order to access easily. So there will always be the option to just not use those parts of our service, but if parents do want to use them and make sure the content that their children are receiving, both Hoopla and Libby have little adjustments that can be made in the settings to move to a kids only collection. And so we would include information on how to access and adjust those settings on this handout as well. So like I said, in January, stay tuned. Sean and our Children's Services librarian, Jen, are working on a draft of that handout. And we've also been starting to have discussions about how we could bring other tools to the children's room to help parents find the books that best fit what they're looking for their family. So there's some work still to be done, regardless of proposal. That being said, with these two proposals online, there are a series of consequences for the library should the board move forward with creating a juvenile LGBTQ special collection. So as the agenda states, we have some speakers here with us today who can share a little bit more information with the board about what some of these consequences look like. So I think, Emily, do you want to start us off? So this is Emily O'Neill. She's representing the Oregon Intellectual Freedom Committee.
I can sit, right?
Yeah, if you either way. And since you're addressing the board,
Yeah.
that's good, thanks.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, April. I have quite a bit to share, so hang in there with me today. My name is Emily O'Neill, and I am speaking as the chair of the Oregon Intellectual Freedom Committee, which is part of the Oregon Library Association. I'm here today to respond to the Crook County Library Board proposal request to move the LGBTQ materials into a separate shelf in the kids section, pulled away from the other kids materials. Much of what I share today is going to have a vein of legal content, and I must be upfront with you that I am not a lawyer, and this is not considered legal advice. If you need legal advice or you have law-specific questions, I suggest you contact a practicing attorney. The United States Constitution says that all Americans, regardless of age, have the right to freedom of speech. Courts have held in order to have informed speech, one must also have informed thought, which courts have also further held that in order to have informed thought, you have the freedom to learn, and therefore, yes, the freedom to read. Therefore, all Americans have the right to think what they want, learn what they want, and yes, read what they want. If you reverse engineer the terms intellectual freedom, it means freedom to your own intellect, and it is indeed a First Amendment right. As we look at that right, we also know that our rights are given to us at birth. They are for Americans of all ages. This means that the right to information is a right to all library users, regardless of their age. Where a restriction to the right for minors exists within a public library is solely in the right of the parent or legal guardian to guide the learning and reading behaviors of their own minor children. Unlike public schools, a public library does not serve in loco parentis, which is legally defined as in the place of a parent. A public library has no legal standing to serve in place of a parent, which means that a public library does not and will not put in place policies or procedures restricting the First Amendment right to information for minors in place of a parent or legal guardian. Only a parent or legal guardian can do that for their own minor children. Before discussing the proposal at hand to separate the LGBTQ content in the kids section, I offer the following definition of censorship from the American Library Association. Censorship is the suppression of ideas and information that some individuals, groups, or government officials find objectionable or dangerous. Would-be censors try to use the power of the state to impose their views of what is truthful and appropriate or offensive and objectionable on everyone else. Censors pressure public institutions like libraries to suppress and remove information they judge inappropriate or dangerous from public access so that no one has a chance to read or view the material and make up their own minds about it. The censor wants to prejudge material for everyone. In this discussion, there seems to be a misconception that censorship only exists with the removal of books or banning of books. Censorship exists in a variety of ways, which includes any behaviors intended to suppress ideas or ideals, to dissuade use of materials or access to information. As we discuss a separate shelving area, the purpose of the separation is exactly that, to restrict access and to dissuade use, which is indeed censorship, which continues to be an infringement upon the First Amendment rights of your library users. To put in place a library policy that specifically separates out materials, in this case, LGBTQ materials, into their own shelving area, which subsequently does require a label on those materials, is an infringement on the rights of your readers. Unlike a cookbook section, where the purpose of the shelving and labeling is a wayfinding tool, the separation of these materials is for the sole purpose to dissuade the use of that collection. With a cookbook section, typically the same procedures are applied across the entire collection. You don't, for example, have only a cookbook pulled out and the rest of nonfiction has no order. No, you also have history, you have art, you have politics, and all other aspects of nonfiction collection organized similarly so that individuals can easily find what they're looking for. To apply LGBTQ shelving section and stickering in this scenario, the purpose is not to help the users find their materials, and it is not applied the same across the entire collection. The purpose of this shelving and stickering is specifically to show what not to check out. It is specifically in place to other this collection and say it is not like the rest and not to be read. As a library user browses the collection, a stigma has now been placed on this collection, which would create an environment where it is clear that this material should not be checked out, browsed, or used. The censorship does not stop in the library browsing experience. In order to create a separate shelving area, it would require the use of an LGBTQ sticker on the book itself, identifying where to shelve that material. In this labeling, the library is also now outing their readers without their consent. Let's say one of our young readers is learning about themselves and is looking for LGBTQ resources to help them understand themselves and what they're feeling. Let's also say that young reader hasn't yet figured out what those feelings mean or what those thoughts mean for them, and they're not ready to talk openly about it. To walk around with a sticker on it that says LGBTQ forces that reader to answer questions and talk about something they maybe aren't ready to, which means that that sticker may make them choose to not check out that book. Let's also say that same reader has an unhealthy home life, and having a book with an LGBTQ sticker on it actually means the prospect of physical harm. In that scenario, they most likely will choose not to check out that book. An LGBTQ section and a sticker is not the same as a cookbook one. Physical, psychological, and emotional damage do not occur from browsing a cookbook section or walking around with a book with a cookbook sticker on it, but that is a real reality of LGBTQ. Let's put into context the same example with health and families. A family or parenting section is neutral. It offers the help finding the right material on the topic for families and parenting. It is objective. We can clearly define what would go into this section or not. Now let's say we decide to add a divorce section with an associated sticker. Unlike a parenting section, which would browse freely without any level of stigma or concern, a divorce section would likely keep a concerned spouse from checking out that content, especially if they are at the library with their spouse, or as a couple, they have a pattern of reading books in proximity of one another. Let's say that couple is in an abusive relationship. They most definitely will not be checking out books on the topic they need because of the shelving, stickering, and fear of physical harm. Similarly, a health section is neutral and offers guidance for where to find the appropriate materials. It is objective and clearly defined as to what a health book would be. Books labeled cancer or irritable bowel syndrome are restricted. forcing the user to make deeply uncomfortable decisions between the use of materials and access to the information they seek, and telling everyone around them very personal health details as they browse the section and check out the books. It is a content specific. If it is content specific and restricts access, it is censorship. In the First Amendment challenge, motivation and compelling state interests are key. The motive in this case has been very well documented to be discrimination. In knowing that a special section or stickering system could cause real harm to your LGBTQ community, the library also opens itself for civil anti-discrimination lawsuits. As quoted from the ACLU Oregon website, they state, the ACLU Oregon works in courts, in the legislature, and in communities to protect and advocate civil liberties and rights. The ACL works we work so our democracy can serve better all people. The ACLU is committed to censoring the individuals and intersectional communities historically disenfranchised by institutions and systems. Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, gender nonconforming people, people with disabilities, LGBTQ, low-income people, immigrants, incarcerated people, refugees, and all other historically targeted groups. The ACLU of Oregon's role is to be principally visionary. They're there to respond to crises and to create a more equitable and caring Oregon. Just to drive this real possibility of litigation home, the state chapters of the ACLU have gotten involved in many library-specific situations. For example, the Missouri ACLU has sued Independent School District for the banning of books. Kansas ACLU has issued warnings to St. Mary's Library over pending vote to remove LGBTQ and socially divisive books from their shelves. The ACLU of Texas has filed complaint against Keller and ISD for unlawful sex discrimination, specifically about a policy that requires ranking and categorization of age-appropriate library materials. The list continues: ACLU Arkansas, ACLU Michigan, ACLU Oklahoma. It is a real possibility that Crook County Library and the ACLU Oregon could get involved. The Crook proposal may be in violation of state law as well, requiring full and equal accommodation without distinction in places of public accommodation. An arbitrary distinction such as this by itself would appear to be a violation, and especially when motivated by prejudicial objection to the content. ORS 659A.403, discrimination in a place of public accommodation is prohibited. Except as provided in subsection 2 of this section, all persons within the jurisdiction of this state are entitled to full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges in any place of public accommodation without distinction, discrimination, or restriction on account of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, national origin, marital status, or age of the individual. It is an age as described in the section or order. The solution here is not to other and out these materials. It isn't to restrict access and force users, yes, even our minor users, to make difficult decisions over their information needs. It isn't to expect a public library to act in loco parentis, which public libraries are specifically not legally obligated to serve in place of a parent. The solution here is for the public library and subsequent library board to follow their documented policies and procedures in place to manage materials challenges and to uphold the intellectual freedom and First Amendment rights of your constituents. It is my understanding that despite all the time that has already been put towards this concern, now via multiple board meetings, private meetings, emails, phone calls, the complainants have yet to follow the documented policies and procedures in place of this library. The complainants have attacked aggressively the library staff, library director, yet have refused to use the tools available to them to address these concerns. In the board allowing these issues to have taken hold the way that they have outside of documented policies and procedures, you now open yourself up for expanded concerns. No library or any government agency should acquiesce to an establishment of a policy or system of segregation of ideas because some people object to those ideas. Specifically, the tools and policies in place that the board should follow include: 1, following your collection development policies, which include retaining access to these materials. 2, follow your board policies, which include hiring, entrusting, and supporting professional library staff to uphold the Library Bill of Rights, the professional ethics of libraries, including supporting unrestricted access to information and protecting the First Amendment rights of all users. 3, follow your complaint procedures, which include requiring complaints to be funneled through your request for reconsideration forms and policies. And 4, follow policies in place for access to youth cards and the explanation to parents the rights of their minor children and their role in monitoring the reading habits of their own minor children. When policies and procedures are drafted and enacted, they are done so outside of an emotionally charged situation and are written in a way to address concerns objectively. Objectivity includes being able to clearly explain without emotion, subjectivity, and opinion the purpose behind library practices. This includes when an air quotes special collection of this nature is curated. Yes, special collections are allowed, but they need to be objectively defined, clearly documented, and without bias or restriction to access of content. This objectivity is key to the library and library board being able to apply the same expectations to all situations every time. When a library shows regular follow-through and application of their policies and procedures, being able to objectively determine the criteria of inclusion or exclusion of library materials, including the creation or decimation of special collections, will be based off of the collection development policy. Concerns over content, specifically including restrictions and censorship, should never be a factor in the creation of a special collection. As soon as it becomes a content-specific restriction purpose, it is censorship and it is infringement upon the rights of your users. When a library board allows for concerns over content to drive policy and procedure outside of documented practices, you have now opened yourself up to very real concerns of active censorship, which as a member of your community can now press legal action based off of their First Amendment rights. It is therefore always in the library's best interest to follow their documented practices objectively and fully 100% of the time. When you allow for aggression tactics such as this to continue, you are essentially rewarding the negative behavior. In psychology, this is called positive reinforcement, which essentially says when somebody does something and you give them what they wanted for it, they will do it again. You are saying to that individual, your course of action is correct. So yes, I will give you what you want. As a board, if you no longer want to have aggressive and unruly board meetings, it is your role to reroute these behaviors to your documented policies and procedures and not succumb to the outbursts. When that happens, you welcome further outbursts. You also weaken your documented policies and procedures because you choose to not follow them, meaning they carry little to no weight. I heard repeatedly in the recordings of the last meeting, I hate for the response to the community is that there is nothing we can do. Fundamentally, there is no credible evidence of harm from the fair and inclusive representation of LGBTQ materials in a library. The proper remedy for those who object to content is simply to bypass the books. And better yet, for users to ask library staff to help find materials that better match their interests. There is plenty you can do. You can create public programs and training on intellectual freedom for the rights of your library users. You can remind parents of their role in the oversight of their minor children's use of library materials and explain that a library does not act in loco parentis. You can provide statistics on the demographic makeup of your county, explaining that there is indeed a need for these materials and resources in your community. You can support your library professionals and the professional ethics of libraries by educating yourselves and understanding the Library Bill of Rights, intellectual freedom, and the First Amendment and legal responsibilities of libraries to provide open and unbiased access to information. You can expect your library users to understand your library policies and procedures, and you can enforce those library policies and procedures exactly the same way every single time. In closing, I want to remind this board that you have an expectation to your community. The expectation comes from the First Amendment rights of your constituents, which includes their right to read and learn freely. It is not your role to say to your members of your community what they can and cannot think, what they can and cannot learn, and what they can and cannot read, regardless of their age. Only a parent can do that, and only for their minor children. To allow for these censorship and discrimination tactics to continue, you open yourself up to legal concerns as well as future aggression tactics. It also says to those that you serve that you believe that you know better than they do as to what they can learn, think, and read. You do not have the ability, power, or control to do that, and I would expect for you to make your decisions on that matter with that level of awareness. Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, we do have 2 additional speakers to talk about additional consequences that should follow the installation of a special collection. So Lynn Mildenstein is here from Deschutes Public Library. I think a lot of you have learned that Crook County Library is in a contractual agreement with Deschutes. It provides help and support and materials and allows our patrons to access a broader variety of materials as well. So Lynn is here just to share a little bit from that perspective.
Thank you, April, and thank you, Crook County Library Board, for letting us come and speak today. So for decades, the Crook County Library and the Deschutes Public Library, we've enjoyed the reciprocal borrowing agreement for many, many years. In 2012, Crook County reached out to the Deschutes Public Library and we entered into a contract. In this contract, as April stated, we do provide at a minimal cost, we provide the integrated library services, which is your public catalog, your library card records, all of your records that you see that show up in the catalog. We also help provide courier services and other resources to a bigger collection that we have at Deschutes Public Library. We also provide access to over 40,000 digital titles, which currently your customers are using. Labeling a collection based on the desire to stigmatize the materials and dissuade use is in conflict with DPL's mission and our results policies, which allows people to freely access ideas and information in a safe and welcoming environment. The discussion and the final decision to discontinue the partnership with Crook County Library and the Deschutes Public Library, it would be conducted by the Deschutes Public Library Board with the DPL executive staff. So the Crook County Library Board, you should be aware that we do have concerns that the action of not following established library procedures and policies and forcing the labeling and creating a separate collection for LGBTQ+ materials would jeopardize and put into question our continued partnership with Crook County Library. Thank you.
Did any board members have any questions about that aspect that you wanted to ask Lynn?
I have a question. I found out recently Rick Sieber's books were banned from the High Desert Museum, and they were taken, I guess Rick, I found out today, Rick came in and talked with April this last week, or maybe she was gone, that his books have been taken, they were scattered throughout the library in fiction and nonfiction, and now they have been reallocated and put in,
it's the local history collection.
The local history collection. So how does that, like how do you redo a collection like that if they were in fiction and nonfiction? How does that make that different? Because his books were controversial.
I don't believe his books were banned. We did not have a reconsideration policy. We follow our policies very closely. We do not remove books lightly. So that hasn't happened. We have not had a reconsideration form, nor have we gone through the process.
Here. They were put into a special collections here.
Yeah, so we have Rick Sieber's materials, fiction and nonfiction, in the Ochiko History Collection out of a desire to make a popular author with a variety of writings accessible in one spot. So when we talk about viewpoint neutral or something like that, I think, you know, thinking about the local history collection versus something like an LGBTQ collection, I think, is that maybe what you're getting at, is what's the difference between putting his books in the local history collection versus putting books in an LGBTQ collection?
Well, yeah, my question was just because there's a lot of controversy surrounding Rick Sieber books. So when you put his books into a special collection, did that happen before or after they were banned from the High Desert Museum. And then like it would require the same thing for intellectual freedoms. So I mean, I'm just asking, I'm not sure, because in order to do that, you're gonna have to relabel and redo all of his books as well. So I'm just curious of how that happens.
So my name is Buzzy Nielsen. I am the former director preceding April of the Crook County Library. And I was the person who chose to put Rick Stever's books all in the Ochako collection. And the reason it was done was for the reason that Emily explained about wayfinding, which, as April said, Rick Stever's a very popular author, but he also is a very diverse author. I mean, he has books not only about history, he has a book about volcanoes, he writes fiction, and they kind of end up all over the library. And so the decision to put his materials in the Ochako collection was made in order to help people find them. That was done long before the High Desert Museum situation came up.
Do you have a date on that? When it was done?
I believe the High Desert situation came up earlier this year, if I am not mistaken. Rick Stever's materials probably got put into the Ochako collection. I am going to guess in 2018 or 2019.
I also couldn't find them online. They've been restricted for access online. I went online and looked.
A mic. We can't hear her back
here.
Oh.
Sorry, I was just asking if they had been restricted online at all, because I was not able to find them online with my library card.
No, you can search his last name in the catalog and they'll come up. You can also find him under Oregon authors. Okay, so thanks, Buzzy, for your insight there. And then we did also invite Buzzy to come share as a representative in his current position working in
Program manager for library support and development services at the State Library of Oregon. I work remotely out of Bend, however, in case you're wondering, in case you're thinking I came all the way over the mountains. So the library support division gives, we have consultants who work with libraries, we give out grants, and we offer a variety of other statewide services to academic, public, school, special, and tribal libraries throughout Oregon, over 1,500 libraries. I want to preface my statements with the same thing that Emily said, which is I am not an attorney. However, I am a manager within the state library, which has some regulatory authority over public libraries in the state of Oregon, mainly in determining public library establishment and also minimum conditions, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. So the minimum conditions, the current minimum conditions for public libraries in Oregon was established by House Bill 2243 in 2019. Before that, the bar for public libraries was very low. Basically, government just had to say they had a library. They didn't have to fund it. They didn't have to have space for it. They didn't have to have staff. And the Oregon library community felt this was insufficient. So that House bill passed nearly unanimously in 2019. And it's codified in ORS 357.405 and Oregon Administrative Rules 543-010-0036. And I can give you those references later if you would like. The modification of the minimum conditions really wanted to acknowledge that a public library is more than just a room full of books. There's way more to it than that. Having a public library means that the public should expect a minimum level of service from a public library. Crook County Library is actually a really great example of a library that not only meets the minimum conditions, but kind of knocks them out of the park. You know, this library offers a variety of services for a variety of ages to a very diverse community. The minimum conditions are based on library size. So there are different conditions for libraries serving 2,000 or fewer. Obviously, you serve far more than that. And the minimum conditions are some really basic things. There are 10 of them, and they address some things like the source of funding, open hours, collections, internet access, staffing, policies, having youth and reference services, and some administrative duties that we expect of public libraries as the state library. But the condition that I am here to speak about today is there is a provision about intellectual freedom within the minimum conditions. And I'm going to read it to you verbatim. So that condition is, have basic policies in place and accessible online for collection management, circulation, and patron confidentiality that incorporate relevant American Library Association professional ethical codes, rules, and guidelines, which Emily discussed earlier. I'm really glad you were here, Emily. Saved me a lot of time. So contained obviously within that requirement is not only that you adopt them in your policies, but that you actually follow those guidelines. Librarianship is a profession, just like being an accountant or a medical professional is a profession. And like those professions, our profession has standards, and those standards are adopted by the American Library Association as our nationwide library association. Also, like those professions, we as a state have a reasonable expectation that people within the library profession follow the standards of our profession, which is why they were included in the minimum conditions for public libraries. And I want to preempt a question that I possibly may receive. I am aware that the county court has hired a First Amendment attorney to say that putting LGBTQ+ books in a separate collection is constitutional. Obviously, I'm not an attorney. I'm not gonna, yes, they are, it is. However, what I do want to say is that this fundamentally, the question of whether to put in a section is not just a constitutional question. There are more than just constitutional questions. So you may wonder, if it's constitutional, why do we as the state of Oregon have the right to tell a library? Well, yeah, but you might not be able to do that. And the question is that the Constitution doesn't necessarily say everything. It doesn't say, for instance, that you can't do somebody's taxes without proper training. That doesn't mean that the state lacks an interest in regulating that activity, just as it does with CPAs, so accountants, just as it does with medical professionals. So this is really an issue when we talk about this minimum condition for public libraries. It's a condition of equitable service for your patrons. So we as the state library expect that a public library will do its job. And its job is to be a welcoming place for the entire diversity of the community that they serve. No community is homogeneous. The beauty of public libraries is that they do welcome everybody in their communities. And even communities that some people might perceive as homogeneous have a lot of people who are very vocal, who nonetheless may not fit into the typical impression of who might live in a particular community. Also particularly important to the state of Oregon is that libraries are attentive and welcoming, in particular to people from communities that are underserved, under-resourced, and often considered protected classes under Oregon law, including the LGBTQ+ community. Emily's shown how labeling LGBTQ+ books or putting them in a separate section can run afoul of that expectation from the American Library Association documents and the State Library of Oregon. I'm not going to rehash those arguments. So the next question is, what if a library doesn't meet all of the public library minimum conditions? So what happens is the library enters a 2-year improvement phase where the library has an opportunity to come back into compliance with those minimum conditions. Our staff works at the library during that period to do that. If the conditions are not fixed by the end of the period, that library will lose legal public library status within the state of Oregon. That comes with it a few consequences. One is that a library would lose the annual state-funded Ready to Read grant, which this year is $9,400 for Crook County Library. They would also lose the ability to apply for any of our other grants, which are predominantly federally funded. In the last 2 years, the library's received over $15,000, including the American Rescue Plan Act grant that April referenced earlier in her report. And those grants can give libraries an opportunity of getting money for projects that are well over that amount, $50,000 to $100,000. A library that loses status would also lose access to free state library resources. This includes staff training that we pay for at the statewide level. One that has been particularly well used and beneficial in Crook County Library is the Homelessness Academy. Lose access to statewide databases, which comprise the vast majority of the databases that Crook County Library offers to its patrons. They would lose free access to the annual summer reading program the state library provides and other special programs. There is also a possibility, I cannot say this is guaranteed as it's not my agency, but there is also a possibility that the library could lose federal E-rate money given out by the Federal Communications Commission, which pays for 90% of the library's internet costs. These benefits value tens of thousands of dollars a year. I also want to say this, we have never had to remove public library status from the library over not following intellectual freedom guidelines. I can't tell you how things would go if this library chooses to restrict books in some way. What I can tell you is this, that depending on the extremity of the action taken, the board's actions could trigger a review of that public library status of this library. And we would look at the situation within the specific context in which it happens. I'll also say this, we really don't want to do that. We don't want to be put in a situation where we have to review this library's public library status due to a failure to abide by intellectual freedom guidelines. And I say that not for our sake because we don't want the work, but I say that for the sake of the entire diversity of the Crook County community that your library serves. In conclusion, I'll also say, like, you are not alone. There are other libraries in Oregon that are dealing with similar issues. This is very challenging for a lot of libraries in the state and the nation. I do want to give you some information, a little bit of a preview of some information. So because this has been such an issue, on behalf of Oregon libraries, we, the state library, have reached out to the Oregon Department of Justice to ask them questions that are specific to intellectual freedom issues. We are currently awaiting the advice that they are going to share. However, we have had some initial conversations with them. And the one thing from that conversation that I will share with you is this. Emily spoke a lot about the First Amendment of the Constitution. What she did not talk about is Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution, which is our freedom of speech provision within the Oregon Constitution, which the Department of Justice says is actually far stronger than the federal government's constitutional protection. So that is something to keep in mind in the decisions that you are going to make today. Ongoing.
Leslie, would you repeat that, please? Article 1.
Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution is the free speech provision.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any other questions for Buzzy?
I have one more question. I was just wondering if you could explain how all of this relates to your categorizing of gun books, bond making books, perhaps and hunting books, how they're categorized and where they're put.
What I had said has nothing to do with any of this.
Well, I'm just talking about for categorizing books. Do you have any hunting or like gun books in the library? Are they in their own sections?
I believe that Emily O'Neill has already talked about why the particulars of separating this collection into its own collection differs from things like putting in books about specific subjects into their own collection. Well, so I'm not going to address that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about Hispanic books, gun books, hunting books. Just what makes it okay for a section and what makes it not okay under the Intellectual Freedom Act. I'm just a little confused.
I did cover that already. It was when I spoke about the difference between cookbooks and this section. So if it is a topic and it's meant specifically for wayfinding, it is very different than setting it aside for the express purpose of restricting access. And all of the topics that you included, I'm not a member of the Crook County Library, but I believe that they follow the Dewey Decimal System, which is a wayfinding aid and is very different than asking these items to be pulled apart specifically. And I believe we've addressed this now, so.
Well, that's why I asked about Rick Sieber's books, because in the Dewey Decimal System, they were fiction and nonfiction, and they were able to be separated. So I was just confused on why they were able to be separated.
It was wayfinding.
God.
Well, oh, I was just going to say, I do also have a comment that county court provided. None of our commissioners were able to join us this evening, nor was Judge Crawford. So I do have a statement to read that was issued from that office. The Crook County Court appreciates the concern of all Crook County residents for the operation of our community's public library. By state and county law, rules and policies for the governance of the county library are formulated and adopted by the Crook County Library Board of Trustees, not by the county court itself. At the same time, it's our job as members of the county court to respond to concerns raised by members of the community and to offer suggestions or help resolve those concerns when we can. This is why Judge Crawford recently attended a meeting of the library board with attorney Aaron Landau after several members of the community raised concerns about finding books in the library's children's section that they felt contained inappropriate material concerning LGBT subjects. Judge Crawford and Mr. Landau spoke briefly about one way the library might approach the issue: to designate an area of the children's section in which books concerning LGBT subjects would be shelved, much like books concerning other subjects, history, art, etc., are already grouped together. However, we have learned that there is a difference there. Mr. Landau confirmed that doing so wouldn't run afoul of the First Amendment so long as those organizational decisions don't effectively disfavor or limit access to a particular subject or point of view. Ultimately, decisions about what books the library characters, to whom they are available, or where in the library they are located are decisions that belong to the library board, and the county court has not required or directed the library board to make any particular decisions on those issues. As before, the county court will continue to listen to the community's concerns on issues of public interest and participate in the community's dialogue on those issues as appropriate. The county court hopes the library board's decisions make our community's library a welcoming and enjoyable place for everyone in the community. And to that extent, I did just also want to say thanks to the community members who have taken the time to write to court, to write to the library board, to write to myself and library staff, sharing your perspective on this proposed action.
Yeah, okay. Oh, we're right on time. 6:30. We're going to have public comment now. And Fuzzy?
I just wanted to say really quickly, I'm sorry I have to leave, but if there are any questions that the board has or that come up during public comment, you are welcome to contact me.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, there's a lot of people here. Apparently, a lot of people want to speak. First, before we start,
could you use the microphone, please?
Oh, I thought I was. So you've heard the two proposals. Everybody understand what they are? Before we start public comment, I would like to see a show of hands, maybe. Who is here to support proposal number 1?
Segregation.
That's creating a special collection.
Okay, proposal number 1 is to create a special collection, special shelving or tagging for books, LGBTQ books in the children's section. Nobody?
What is number 2?
Number 2 is leave everything just the way it is.
Which is giving our children access to
freedom of choice, yes.
Our children.
Okay. No.
The First Amendment.
Please, let's not all be talking over one another. I had suggested to Laquita when we started, with a lot of letters to the editor, a lot of letters to us. And I was just curious personally of the people who have taken time out to show up tonight. Of those of you here, if you're comfortable, how many are here to support leaving the books where they are with the which means and thank you. You're responsible for that. And how many support the proposal to segregate them into a different location? So it looks like Group A wins, but there are. This was just for my personal information.
Folks, have a little respect for the board, all right? They're in charge of this meeting, not you. All right? Just wait for your turn to comment. Have respect for the board.
Okay, hold it. Now we're going to carry. We're going to carry on with this. Now, people who signed up to comment, you're going to give them. When your name is called, you get 3 minutes. Then you stop.
the X on the floor if they would like to stand on the X, if they need the microphone. I guess we can.
Laquita, can I make she's been waiting for a long time, so we have her go first, if that's okay.
Sure. Is she signed up?
Yeah, she
Yes.
was.
Yes.
Come on over. Do you want a mic, Stella?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Can I read mine?
Yeah, you can sit wherever you feel comfortable.
You can sit right here.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to.
Before she starts, as a parent who loves to read, I've always wanted to foster a love of reading in my kiddo. And a lot of people kind of discouraged bringing her down here today because of sensitive topics and uncomfortable feelings and stuff like that. But this is the second time that she's been affected by something like this. She attends Steens Pillar Elementary School, which does not have a library. And so the children were walking down to this library in order to utilize the children's library when parents complained, and they were no longer allowed to come use this library. So they just had access to no library, and we didn't say anything then. And so this is the second time it's affecting her section of the library. So I want her to be able to say something now.
Hi, my name is Stella, and I think those books should stay in the children's section because I had a crush on a girl in 3rd grade. Not because a book or show compelled me, but because it was the way I felt. Also, kids who have crushes on boys or girls can read those books so they can feel connected to them and not be lonely. In Owl House, Luz and Amity were together, and the creator did that on purpose so kids can connect to it. I don't think dogs are that great, but I don't think dog books should be moved out. I would choose not to read them. Also, a dog is not a man's best friend. A cat is.
Yes, Ben Smith. Ben Smith. Maybe just set the mic up on the front table. Yeah, could you do that for us and place that up there? Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Ben Smith. I'm a high school senior here in Crook County. I'm here to oppose any books that sexualize kids. These books that include any sexual content whatsoever are deliberately made to hurt children. LGBTQ issues are inherently sexual and should not be taught to kids that don't have any ability and not have any maturity to talk about sexual issues. I don't understand how such issues can be taught to kids like this. I personally believe that anybody that teaches or exposes young children to any content of a sexual nature without parental consent is committing a crime. If a child's parents would like their child to be exposed to such things, there is nothing stopping them from doing so. And as far as if this is doing direct harm to kids, and I have personally been harmed by such things, so nobody can. I personally have been harmed by such books throughout my life in school, and I do not want to see kids ever hurt like this by reading any books with sexual content. Thank you.
Sandy Curbo.
Can you hear me really good? Because I've had a really hard time hearing everybody tonight. This is my 3rd time to address this board, and there's been a lot of misinformation put out into our community. At no time we requested the removal of books. If you remember the last meeting, I began by stating, we are not a country that bans or burns books. The request to put the books into a category, okay. The request was to put the books into a category. The request did not ask for stickers to be put on books. The request didn't ask for them to be hidden in the back of the room, just simply a category. So by doing that, you make it easy for the folks that want to access this material for their children, but you also make it easy for the folks that want to avoid the material for their children. So we're not asking that anybody's restricted. And I'm sorry that that has gone out into our community, but I strongly feel that any content of this type should be just put into a collection. I don't really care where you put it. We didn't ask you to put it in the back of the room, but just group it as though you would group the cooking. And so it's easily accessible. That's all we're asking. And parents are the ones that are responsible for the content that their children read. So they need to pay attention. Thank you.
Tracy Rolson.
Evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I am a Crook County resident. Some in our community should be ashamed of themselves for turning the Crook County Library and its resources into a political agenda. Libraries are meant to be a safe place for all to learn, explore, and become a better person in the world. Straight, gay, Christians, atheists, and all colors of people are welcome at a library to explore and read books that match their lifestyle passions and learn about others' lifestyles too. The calls for banning books, separating books, and defunding the library are some of the dumbest things I have ever heard in the current era we live in. Libraries aren't just about Republicans or Democrats. Libraries aren't just about religious beliefs. Libraries aren't just about sexual orientation. Libraries are learning for about all of these things and much more. How many of those who are attacking the library even have a library card or check out books on a regular basis? If you don't use the resource regularly, then you need to keep your opinions to yourself. For those who are pushing for a ban of books, would you ban your Christian Bible because of the content in it? Yeah. Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 20. She lusted after her lovers whose genitals were like those of donkeys and whose emissions were like that of horses. The so-called greatest story is very readily available to children. Do only some books get a pass for the content in them? Our community should not attack our schools or library until we look at our concerns from every angle. Seek to understand before you seek to argue. What's next for this group of narrow-minded individuals, banning certain people from public facilities? History shows small restrictions to accommodate a few lead to bigger issues moving forward. Have you ever read about Hitler and the Third Reich's banning and burning of books because they wanted everyone to think just one way, their way? Try using the library to learn about history and past mistakes. You may figure out how not to repeat them. And you may acquire a different opinion and build a more cooperative nature with your fellow humans. Speaking of learning from past mistakes, the county, which apparently is at home tonight, is setting themselves up to repeat the same mistakes the Crook County School District Superintendent made when she removed books from the school's curriculum and severed the library's relationship with elementary schools, all because a few uneducated people bullied the system. Supporting a ban or restriction of books takes you down a path of inequality and not representing all of our community. Political leaders do what is morally right, not what's right for your political friends. Jesus, Gandhi, and Dr. Martin Luther King didn't succumb to the pressure of a one-sided few just to make things easy on themselves. They stood fast for inclusion and freedoms for all. Will you? We can do better. All of us can do better. Thank you for your time, board.
No, excuse me. Yes. Are you signed up to speak?
I'm just asking.
No,
for his reference.
no, we are not holding a dialogue here. We're having testimony. Also, people, when it's not your turn to talk, don't talk. And don't make comments on the person who is talking, please. The same respect you would expect.
Barbara View. Hopefully I said that correctly.
My name is Barbara View, and I would like to know. Can't hear. Is it on?
Say yes.
My name is Barbara View. I'm a Crook County resident. I would ask how many of you here are from Crook County? Raise your hands. It's a real hard thing to believe that there's that many that live in Crook County. That go both ways. Anyway, my concern is that the library in general across the country is focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a good focus. It should be. But the thing is that in this day and age, libraries are changing. This is no longer just a local issue. If you've watched TV, listen to the news. I bring up an example that's been on Newsmax and Fox TV with Crook Cameron. Probably not most of you know Growing Pains. He's a conservative actor and writer. He wrote a good conservative children's book. It's called As You Grow. He tried to read it to libraries across the country, went to 52 libraries to see if he could read it and have it on their shelves. He was rejected 52 times. The messaging from the libraries was in general, it doesn't align with the library direction that they want to go. Yet these are the same libraries that allow and welcome Drag Queen Story Hour by drag queens reading LGBTQ books to little children, 2 to 6 years old. And the book, one of the books is, as people have heard, the hips on the drag queens go swish, 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 which is a little story rhyme that is much more innocent than that. Where there is diversity and equality and inclusion, there must be that from both sides and not show any prejudice one way or the other. And these little children's books need to be in there just as well as LGBTQ books for little children, because they look at the pictures, they look at what's going on and can't really absorb unless parents talk to them about it and explain about it. And children, the age of 2 to 10 years old, their minds are so impressionable and vulnerable, and they are easily swayed by people and what they read, what they see. And we need to protect them from that and not just have it in the public library to be so accessible. It should be on shelf, labeled, and put there. Everybody can access it. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to access it. And like what was said, they can easily find those books if they want to read them. So that's my take.
Sue-Ann Neal, sorry.
How soon you
Of
forget.
all of the Sue-Anns. Yes.
Madam President, Makita, glad you are, trustees, staff, and guests. If I'm within a couple of seconds of my 3 minutes, please let me know and I'll talk faster. I'm not as eloquent as O'Neill, but I will try my best. More grassroots, I'm from Crook County. My name is Sue-Ann Neal, and I'm a native of Prineville, born and raised. It was my pleasure to recently serve 2 terms on the Library Board of Trustees. I put my glasses on, I'm losing my voice here. And 1 year as president. I was privileged to work with 2 library administrators, Buzzy and April. They have distinct management styles, are family-oriented individuals, and both were diligent in operating the library within national standards, Oregon standards, and common sense. I remember repairing book spines with Janet Kronberg, and Jerry knows Janet, when we were early teenagers in the first library, ground floor, west side of the courthouse. How many were around that remember that? Not very many. In high school, the library is located in what is now the tax assessor's office. And now we have a state-of-the-art small library that is timeless in design and being 20+ years old and still serves the growing community needs. I have friends that come in and family and I bring them to the library. They can't believe this building is 20+ years old. This county did a wonderful job building this library. Excuse me. A few months ago, I eagerly listened to concerns of some of the people in this crowd this evening. I started falling for some of their rhetoric and forgot that being a lot like social media, you tend to believe your friends without doing your own research. It must be true. It says so on my Facebook page. All my friends are sharing it. And now the misinformation on the letters to the editor the last few times. It's sad. I also preferred to find middle ground rather than argue and offered suggestions that I came to regret at the time I served. And I apologize. I recommended we mark the books. And that was a sad, sad day because I started doing my research. I wonder how many here actually have a library card. Yay, good. I'm so glad. I don't, yes.
Your time is up. Time.
Oh, come on. All right. All right.
You can continue.
Board okay with you?
Yeah. Oh, good. Can I'd rather just sit down.
Yeah, I sit next to Emily.
After I
sit next to Emily.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I don't even need a microphone. I have a loud voice. Okay. I don't use the library the same way I used to because things are easier to access sometimes on Google, but not everything is on Google. What I have learned since I left here and did some research, and a lot of it was done on the same website that O'Neill was using. O'Neill and Neal, this is cool. Anyway, compromising national standards can cost this county. Me, we, and all the taxpayers, not just a few $100s in grants and other resources, but tens of thousands of dollars like Buzzy was talking about. When I sat on the board, we saw firsthand all the money that comes into this library that we, the people, don't have to fund through our tax dollars, and neither does the county. All because we lose our accreditation as a public library. We're not a school or a private library or a bookstore, but we are a public library for all people. The stacks are arranged the same in every public library you go to in the whole United States, maybe in other countries, but I don't think I ever went to a library in another country. I had many things to do. So if you're old enough, you remember the Dewey Decimal System, it's still in use. If you remember, you can find a book anywhere. The book selection in a public library represents the people within the community by the age, by race, by culture, by religion, by sexual orientation, and so many more divisions. This library staff does a fine job researching recommended options for libraries and communities of our size. Prineville is becoming much more diversified. We have Muslims, Jews, Christians, LGBTQ+. In this room, but all through the community, watch the kids going to and from school. They are your neighbors. A sidebar to Christian understanding, love thy neighbor, all people. Segregating certain reading materials is just a form of banning or burning. It was practiced in Germany in the 1930s. If you segregate any form of reading material to so-called protect certain people, those who want to access those same materials are then being discriminated against. So pick your choice. Who do you discriminate against? Someone or no one? Those people are then being isolated and they get ostracized, pointing out as, ooh, look what books those people are reading. A public library plays fair. Sadly, that's what's not going on here. This is a form of hate. If it roots here, it won't end here. It will just grow with more change and diversity that we don't want. We want diversity of people. We will also lose our membership, like was stated in the Tri-County Book Exchange. Who cares? I heard of that in the back of the room, and a lot of little mumbling. We all should. Our citizens order books in the thousands annually. I think at one time it was like 20,000 one year that we had come through that people in Crook County ordered because we didn't carry them. Well, why don't we? Because we don't have the room. We don't have the money to buy those extra books. We don't have the money to build an annex or another library. We have just the right size for who we are, and we don't need to get ahead of ourselves. For every action, there is a consequence. The consequence of segregating books is not only an equality issue, but we talked about the financial issue. I heard that the commissioners sought the legal advice, and it is legal to segregate books. You can take all those books and pile them in a corner, and that's legal. But until it is challenged from a discrimination point of view, and that cost could be enormous, not just a few dollars. There are a lot of offensive books in the library, this library or any library. And that's my opinion, but guess what? I don't read them. What is offensive to one isn't offensive to another. But I did read the books that were discussed on the earlier controversies when I was sitting in Laquita's place. They're children's books. You can read about a dozen an hour. So please take it upon yourself to do your own research and read those books. This is all spurred by emotion. I'm gonna lose my place, but I'm almost done, I promise. Do your own research and searching your own heart. It has become a purposely organized quiet riot here in Crook County over books. Oh my gosh, give me a break. These books are age appropriate. They aren't pornography. If you want pornography, go look in the stacks. I can even tell you a few of the names if you really want to know. Back from when I was in high school and my parents didn't want me to read them. I'm not going to go into parental or guardian responsibility. Everyone needs to find their own way, educating the youth on diversity. They will find out for themselves as they grow and learn, and maybe they might learn it wrong if others teach them wrong. So teach early. Stop the bullying, stop the hate, and I do urge the trustees to do the right thing with equality to all people, with fiscal due diligence for our county leaders and our taxpayers. Represent the entire community, not a radical few. Thank you.
Amy Bowman.
My name is Jamie Bowman. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Executive Director for Prideville and the VP of our new P5 chapter and both LGBTQ focused nonprofits here in Prideville. I am here not only on behalf of my organizations, but also on behalf of my family. When my children realized who they were between 3 and 5 years old, books like the ones that these folks are protesting were invaluable to us. Because of the stigmas that families like mine face, it often isn't safe to access these materials that they are made to be very obvious. To ask children and families to essentially out themselves in a town like this is abhorrent. I'm sure you've noticed that over the last several meetings at both this location and at the schools, I have been one of the only people to consistently show up and speak out in opposition of these views, aside from tonight. Thank you, everybody. The reason for that is that a large portion of our queer community does not feel safe showing up at these things and speaking out. That's not something to be proud of or to celebrate. I hope that it's cause for some introspection. Both sides, my faith is not in opposition to queer people. It's weird that theirs is. The arguments these folks are making do not deserve to be dignified with this level of response. They are committed to misunderstanding. The fact that so many people are okay with our library essentially shutting down over a subject matter that they don't understand and aren't willing to earnestly investigate is deeply disturbing. We just heard about all of the incredible programs that are part of this library, and y'all want to take them away because of some kids' books? There are no explicit or inappropriate materials in the children's portion of the library. It is not sorted by subject, and the amount of books that have been ordered recently is far fewer than has been touted at these meetings. Libraries have an obligation to serve the community, and part of this community and all communities is queer children. They deserve to feel safe. They deserve to have materials that speak to their life experience. They deserve to have peers who understand their struggles and their triumphs and meet them with compassion. They do not deserve to be told that they need to be separated from their peers. We established long ago that separate but equal is not how we operate. The consistent argument that I've heard is that these materials do not meet the value system of these folks that keep showing up. However, they are very in line with my family's value system and with many others in Prineville. These materials are doing absolutely no harm to anyone, but are greatly helping families that need them. Once again, the reasons that you aren't seeing these folks in here in droves is because they're afraid of retaliation and harassment. It's not because they don't exist here. This isn't just about books. It's about setting a precedent and a message. Do you want to send a message to your patrons that it's okay to other people? Do you want to give validity to the concern that LGBTQ people are inappropriate and should not be around children? Queer people exist in all facets of life. They have forever, and their stories are expansive. Simply having a queer character does not make a book a queer book. I am honestly flabbergasted that things have escalated this far, and I truly hope that the equitable and honorable choice is made in this matter. Also remember, if you find drag queen story hour to be sexual, it means that you find drag queens to be sexy.
Remy Rammers, did I say that right?
Hi, I'm Emerson Remy Remmers. Yes, I am a Crook County resident. I am the pastor of Our Savior's Lutheran Church. I am on the board of PFLAG, and I am queer. I speak from these experiences about the importance of a public library. Growing up, I felt incredibly lonely because I knew I wasn't like my peers, and I did not know why. I didn't know how that we couldn't relate to each other. I just knew I was different. And so I had friendly surface level friendships, but not really deeper relationships. I loved reading, and that became my escape. I rode my bike to the library and would spend hours curled up on the floor reading books. While there weren't any explicitly queer books in my library with queer characters, I did find some that were like me. And as a queer person from Texas, I have experienced a lot of hatred towards me and my community, especially from a religious perspective. People have done harmful things in the name of my religion, and that incredibly saddens me, and I am truly sorry for that hatred. As a kid and teen, as a result, I did not feel safe going in spaces that were explicitly queer because of the community that raised me. It was only until when I left for college, I felt comfortable going in spaces that were marked as LGBTQIA. One of the main tenets of my religion is informed by how I move in this world is loving my neighbor. So I got to learn about my neighbor. And the Youth Truth surveys tell us that 20% of our middle schoolers identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. And we know the #1 reason that kids are bullied in middle school is that someone perceives them to be gay. In response, you could say, well, then 20% of our children's books and teens books should reflect the population we have and have LGBTQIA+ characters. And the fact is they're less than 5 and 1% in those areas. It's not just queer kids that will benefit from these books. Every single student in our schools has a classmate who is LGBTQIA+. Every single student could benefit from learning about other kids and other family structures. The LGBTQIA+ community did not ask for this separate section. These books are children's books and they belong with the other books. Loving my neighbor means learning about my neighbor. I don't know how to care for and love my neighbor unless I learn from them. This library has provided me opportunities to learn about neighbors from other minority experiences than my own, so that I can love them better and make sure they have the resources they need. Thank you.
Mabel?
Oh, X marks the spot, huh?
If you want.
Okay, I was wondering what that was about.
Wherever.
There we go. My name's Mark. I've only lived here in Prineville about 5 years, but Is that better? Yeah. Oh, okay. My name's Mark, and I've only lived here in Prineville about 5 years or so. When I first came to this town, and I said, "Oh, you got a library here?" And really, this dinky little town got a library? And I could say dinky little town because I'm from a little town in upstate New York that's got one stoplight. You guys have got 4, so this is a big time for me. But on a serious note, April and all the rest of the staff here, I want to apologize to you guys about the nasty, vile comments that have come your way through social media. And April, I'm so sorry to see you go, because I don't know what went on here before I got here, but you guys have done one hell of a job getting this place going. Okay, so kudos to you. You're coming back. You got my vote. When I was a kid growing up, I remember I spent hours in the library, not because I had to, but because of thirst for knowledge. Okay, we didn't have LGBTQ back then. I didn't know what one was. But I'm so glad that you guys have got them here. And here's why. Okay, kids this day are faced with a myriad of situations going on, politics going all over the place. The best thing that you guys can do is educate them. Okay, if you have a kid that has questions about LGBTQ, take them to the library, show them one of these books. Okay, I've looked through several of these books, and there aren't naked bodies running all over the place, screaming and yelling or anything like that. Go look for yourself, please. Don't take my word for it. Okay, they're right over there, easy to find. Okay. Now, the worst thing that you can do as a parent is tell a kid, no, you can't do that, and then not tell them why. Because guess what? They're going to go find, anybody who's a parent knows just as I do, they're going to go find out the information for themselves. The worst place they can go is their peers at school, because those kids don't have a clue either. So, am I getting here? Okay, the worst thing that can happen in this library is to do away with, we should keep these books just the way they are. Because the way I understand it from these ladies here, and was it Buzzy, is that his name? Is that if we do this, if you sequester these books in any way, shape, or form, this library is going away. And I've been over here in the morning, I've seen moms with kiddos in here with their books reading. There are teenagers over there in the teen room over there, reading books over there about God knows what else. So, yeah, running out of time?
Couple seconds.
Okay. So anyway, you get my vote to keep these things right where they are. Now, parents, if you don't want them reading it, don't read it. It's that simple. Okay?
Samuel Dunaway.
Hi. I am here tonight as a member of this community, as a third-generation Crook County resident, as an educator, and as a proud 25-year Crook County Library card holder. I am here today disappointed because this controversy has shown me how wrong I was to assume some things about this community I grew up in. I thought, for example, that this community opposed censorship, cancel culture, and bureaucratic overreach, but I was wrong. I also thought that the people of this community would loudly defend the First Amendment when called to do so. I was wrong. I thought this community understood the importance of keeping the public library public, a communal space containing many different ideas and values, accessible to all, serving all. I was wrong about that too. But there's one thing I thought and still think about this community that I wasn't wrong about. There's enough room for everyone. As an educator and GSA advisor, I can tell you there are LGBTQ kids in this community. They exist. They are being raised in every kind of household. They're going to our schools, and they deserve to see themselves and their stories and the stories of people like them at their town's library, and not on a segregated shelf that violates library procedure. They also deserve so much better than to see their existence and their rights constantly debated by adults. encouraged by the people who are here to support keeping things as they are, because it shows me that maybe I wasn't wrong to think some of those things I mentioned before. Every parent has the right to decide what their child can and can't read, but no parent has the right to make that choice for anyone else's child. The proposed consequences, if we leave things as they are hypothetical. But the consequences, if we go against library standards and the First Amendment, are very real, and they would be devastating for this community. Library board, keep the public library public and say no to exclusion and censorship. Thank you.
Shannon Bruner.
Said my last name right, thank you. Hello, my name is Shannon. I'll start by saying that I grew up in Prineville. I have lived here for over 20 years of my life, and I went to Ochoa Elementary School, which doesn't exist anymore, and I went to the middle school, and I graduated from the high school in 2011. I didn't plan what I was going to say. I already sent a letter in support of the library that I hope the board had time to read. I don't know if you've had time to read everything that you've been given, but I hope so. I don't have much else to say on top of what these three said earlier. I think it speaks for what the impact is going to be if we do anything with these books, and that's going to have a much larger detrimental effect on the entire community instead of if we do nothing and we disappoint some loud, angry people in the community that will get over it. I think the only other thing I want to add is that I just want to describe a little bit about how I'm feeling physically. I've been stressed out about this meeting the entire week. I've been sick to my stomach for several hours. I've been shaking. I don't know how many other people are feeling this way. But let's see, I sent some of my friends today a half joking Snapchat about the fact that I was nervous about this meeting tonight, and that I hope I don't get shot for my beliefs. Half wanting them to have that just in case anything bad did happen and they could share it, and maybe I'd go viral. But that's a real fear I have, and that's just based on me coming to this meeting to say that I support this and not, and I'm in a relationship with a cis man, and you know, I'm not visibly part of the LGBT community, and I'm that scared. So I just hope that gives a tiny bit of perspective that if the books are moved into their own area, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how that, you know, why would that be a problem for people? And if I'm this nervous about just being here today, that is definitely going to be a barrier for kids who might want to look at those books. And I think that's all I have. Thank you, board.
Casey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Casey. I'm a queer card-carrying member of this community. As a number nerd, a full-time data geek, I'd like to start with zooming out a little bit and looking at the broader picture, in which I see what's happening in this community as a real mirror of the conservative censorship that's happening across the country. A recent study that was published found that of 1,500 books that have been banned or otherwise censored in the US, there's a particular focus on titles relating to race and the LGBTQ community. In this study, they found that 22% of these books dealt with topics of race or racism, 33% explicitly addressed LGBTQ themes or have LGBTQ characters, and 41% had characters who were non-white identifying. And these trends are really startling. I mean, if you just take the moment to pause and acknowledge what that means, it's a direct and considered approach to other and continue to marginalize already subjugated groups of people. And they have real physical harm and manifestations in our community. Unlike this, perceived notion that having queer books on the shelf is sexualizing our children, the othering of groups of people whose identity is wrapped up in being LGBT, we have seen a huge uptick in violence. And in fact, in Colorado, there was a murder of 5 folks in a queer club not too long ago. And what I'd like to acknowledge is that the perpetrator's father, upon hearing of this violent act where his son killed 5 people in a queer safe space, said, well, I heard my son was in a gay club, and well, I'm relieved at least he's not gay. And that's what this kind of language, these practices of othering and saying, these books, these people do not belong here. Well, look around, folks, your community is gay. There are people here who identify. We live here, we exist, and your kids do too. So let young people read. Your job as a parent is to serve as a resource as they encounter challenging topics. Segregating topics like LGBT issues serves no purpose except to remove yourself as a safe resource. If your child were to come out to you in 10 years from now and told you that they wish they'd had more information, more resources, more community, more support, what would you say? Censoring LGBT content isn't going to stop queer children from existing. And allowing equal access to inclusive literature acts as a vital lifeline that provides a sense of belonging for children who may not have supportive community, accepting families, or representation elsewhere. And I'd just really quickly like to comment about the rumor mill that happens here and the kind of harm that is perpetuated when things go unfact checked. Several months ago, I was at a meeting here and it was claimed that a queer book was advertising a chat room for pedophiles. And couldn't we all agree that we don't want chat rooms for pedophiles?
I'm sorry, your time is up.
It was a suicide hotline. And I just think it goes to show that it's really important we take a good hard look at ourselves, what we're spreading in our community, and that the resources that folks want for our kids are just to keep them alive.
Which mirrors? Myers, sorry.
That's all right. Good evening. First, I would like to thank you for the way this meeting has been conducted, giving us an opportunity to express ourselves, and the people who've been in here. I sort of had to rewrite my speech. There have been many remarks made, excellent, and tough to follow Julie. She said it all. But I would like to point out a couple of things, and mine isn't going to be very long. There's 2 issues here. Number 1 is that a public library is to serve all people not in a safe environment, not just what the majority of the community wants. When I say safe environment, that means that a child who is questioning what he is or how he's different has the opportunity to look at something without anyone recognizing that that's what he's trying to do. Probably didn't get the answers at home. He's looking for them somewhere else. Number 2, censorship. First Amendment, it was said by experts here. I'm sort of sad because this is the second round of anger in the community. We had it before with the school board, and I had the opportunity to serve on the school board, and over 10 years ago, we had a censorship issue with Alexei Sherman's book about the Linden boy. And fortunately, we put it to rest by standing by our policy. And that simply was that the parent had the opportunity to have their child not have that book as part of the curriculum. Yet here, this past summer, the school district, someone in it, I don't know for sure who backed down, but they took books out of the curriculum reading material because the Moms for Liberty thought that they were inappropriate. I understand there's still several books in there, but the books were censored. There's no way to get around that. That's the elephant in the room. Basically, they caved. So now we're here at the library situation. The Board of Trustees must stay the course. We've come too far to give up now. This is an excellent library. I'm only sorry I didn't get to know April before. And I wish her well in her job, and I really can't blame you for not sticking around. I just like to say one more thing. Somebody took the effort to make some really neat little stickers and bumper stickers. I want to see a new one. I love my library. Let it be.
Ruthie McKenzie.
I would just like to share a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. In many other forms of government, the importance of the individual has disappeared. The individual lives for the state. Here, in our democracy, the government still exists for the individual. But that does not mean that we do not have to watch or that we do not have to examine ourselves to be sure that we preserve for all people those civil liberties which are the basis of our democracy. Thank you. And thanks for the library.
Alan Smith.
Oh, has Alan Smith left?
Cody Hughes.
Hey guys, I just want to reiterate what most people have been saying. I'm against censorship, I'm against homophobia, I'm for the First Amendment. I just think that people who call themselves Christians and yet hate and Americans but don't respect the First Amendment deserve to call themselves neither.
We have how many more?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Cindy, Becky got skipped. She was right after me.
So it's.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Becky doesn't practice shield very often.
Okay, it's 7:20, and do we want to continue forward with hearing testimony past our agenda time?
Sure. I'm going to sit because I'm about 3 weeks away from knee replacement. But my name is Becky Groves, and I was born right up here at Pioneer Hospital along with my 3 children and have lived here all my life. I have been working with the LGBT community for 20 years as a volunteer with PFLAG, a nonprofit that provides support, educates, and advocates on behalf of our LGBTQ loved ones. I have 3 children. One of them is gay, is married, and is raising a daughter in Prineville. There are 35 LGBTQ related books in the children's library, amongst hundreds of books that are not in any way related that any child or parent can choose from. There's a complaint system at the library that anyone can use to have a book reviewed that they might think has inappropriate content, yet not one person has filed any complaints. Instead, they harass and bully our librarians and spread misinformation. Monitor what your child checks out, and there isn't a problem. If there truly is something that is inappropriate in the book, then go through the procedures to file a complaint. However, just because something is against your religion is not a valid reason for pulling a book. Children need to see themselves represented in books. Children need to see their families represented in books. Isolating them onto one shelf is not the answer. This puts targets on the backs of anyone viewing those books. Separate is not equal. We know children who learn about people who are different than them is a valuable experience and reduces bullying and is suicide prevention. April and the other librarians have done a wonderful job in communicating what is expected of our county library and how things are handled. Thank you, April. You will truly be missed as you move on to your next position.
Kristen Rosenau.
Hey, you got it. Pretty good.
Of course, Kristen.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan Rosenau, as you perfectly enunciated. I have been in Prineville since 1998. I am not from out of town. And I'm a father. I have a 3-year-old daughter. One of the books I love to read her is All Things Great and Small. The poem, yeah. All creatures great and small, all things bright and wonderful. The book ends with the Lord God made them all. I also read my daughter the Gay BCs. We have balance. And I want my daughter to have the freedom to decide who she is. I want my daughter to have access to the resources for her to decide who she is. Now, she would still have these if the books were set aside. You know, this isn't about banning these books. These are about setting aside these books. However, don't you think that banning these, or that putting these books in their own section invites vandalism? Or what happens if someone comes along and says, you know what? This place has a lot of fire suppression systems. I'm sure it'd be fine if I lit a fire right here. I'm sure that the fire would be put out and only this one section would be burned. Why don't we just throw a pink triangle above the books, huh? I think you'll understand why this can be dangerous, why this is a bad idea for the library. Now, there are a couple of things that were brought up from others that I would like to address real quick. Differences between setting aside these books and like not carrying other books. For example, the Anarchist's Cookbook, a book that shows you how to make bombs. Does the library carry this book?
I'd have to look it up.
I'd be willing to guess no, because that book is dangerous because it shows you how to make bombs. Does the library carry Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler?
Yes.
It does. Really? Okay. A little surprising, but all right. That book I consider to be dangerous. It has some very, very dangerous ideas, but I'm not going to tell you that you should not have it. That is your decision, and I will leave it at that. Now, e-books might be scary for some people. Oh my gosh, there's a scene, or there's a part in the book where two people of the same gender were kissing, and now I'm scarred for life. Well, I'm terribly sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. There are books that scarred me and people.
Marcel Povit.
Good evening, Madam Director. Thank you for your service and patience. And I'm sorry to the librarians for the nastiness that you've had to endure. My daughters love the library. They love the children's section. My daughters attend 3 different public schools here in Prineville. And I can assure you that we're going under a cultural transformation in respect to acceptance and compassion towards the gay community. They're friends, they love them. The old ideas of hate and vilification of the gay community, they're going away. The young kids are changing this whole equation. And so, unfortunately, Mr. Dunaway, took some of my material. So yeah. If the board does segregate these books, the future looks dark and questionable. But I'm here to say that the future is bright, because if the board segregates those books, our children will reverse that decision.
Jennifer Sandoval.
Madam Chairwoman, board members, April, librarians. I was proudly born and raised in Chicago, not Crook County. However, I have been a resident here for 15 years. I'm a homeowner. I pay taxes and I vote in Crook County. I'm also a huge fangirl of the library ever since I moved here. I've lived in a lot of different places in my life. And the first thing I do when I move to a new town is check out the library. And I've also heard from people, lots of people, and I talk about how great the Prineville Library is. They say, what, you have a library? And I say, yeah, check it out. And I have been so impressed with the collections here, with the welcoming environment, the inclusivity, and I just want to say that I hope the board will consider leaving the children's section as it is. I do believe it's a parent's right to have a say in what their children read. However, it's no parent's right to stigmatize those books for other children.
Eric Blaine.
Good evening. I'm not here to discuss the topic of the night. I'm here to say, April, I've enjoyed working with you. And I am very bitter at Oregon State University for sending you away. So thank you and good night.
Yeah. Katie Solis.
Sorry. I don't have anything prepared. My name is Kate Solis. I'm from Prineville for like 18 years, I think, something like that. I've raised 4 daughters here. I homeschooled them throughout the time. I'm also an educator. I work at Ridgeview High School as a college and career center coordinator. So I'm not well prepared because I've been working in Redmond, but I got wind that there was something happening at the library, and I've heard such wonderful things about the library the last few years. So I was like, what's going on? And I've heard such amazing things about you. And last night I came in and it's beautiful, and I raised my children here. We came to the library because I homeschooled, of course. And I was one of those very fundamentalist homeschoolers, and nothing against you, but I am one of you. And I had that experience of, I'm going to keep my kids at home and we're going to learn these things and do the right thing. And then as I've evolved and grown in my love for humanity, I actually let them go to school. And, and then I started working at work. And all the preconceptions that I had about what would happen if my children went to school, what they're really like there and what they teach there, I was challenged when I began to have relationships with those people. So that has made all the difference in my life and my view towards the LGBTQ community, as well as something else that happened in my fundamentalist growing up and raising my children. Little did I know I had a daughter who was gay. And when she came out to me, I was still of the opinion this was a dangerous thing. I did not treat her well. I did not handle it well at all. I am ashamed to say that, but I'm also very, very grateful to say that my worldview about loving humanity, that being directed by my belief in a higher power. I'll keep it as inclusive as possible. That individual in my family taught me more about love and understanding and compassion. She didn't reject me. She gently received this incredible fear that I had about her life. Things like, you're not going to have grandchildren for me. Oh my God, I'm telling you, I was a freak. Sorry, I do not mean to say that anyone here, because that's something I have had the opportunity to be in the vicinity now of the gay community. And it's been changing my life and helping me to grow as a human being. That is all I can say. I will share this really quickly, because from my experience coming from divorce years ago, because I'm old, not that. When I was a young girl growing up in Redmond, I was one of the few people who were from a divorced family. I didn't talk about that. I would have loved to known, had somebody have books that I could go and read about a divorced family. Because at that time, I was actually told I couldn't play with some of the people. Can I do 1 more minute? I couldn't play with some of my friends because they found out I was divorced and my mom attended a certain church and that was not something we did. And so it was a stigma for me. And so you people here, maybe that's not a stigma anymore. Everybody raise their hand who's divorced. There we go. Back 20, 30, 40 years ago, you wouldn't have done that. And that's how I feel about the LGBTQ. I'm hoping that 20 years from now, when we say, who's LGBTQ, who's has a family, and they get to read books about how families can love and care and support one another. And maybe there'll be many more hands and they won't feel afraid, like you didn't feel afraid to say, yeah, I'm from a divorced family. So I'm not prepared to say, I wasn't prepared, but I just want to say thank you. And thank you for kind of revealing to me with all the beginning stuff, what the library's done, who you are. I spent years going to the library because I moved 36 times in my life. And the one safe place I had to go was the library. So,
Ashley Epler.
My name is Vashti, and I am a resident of Crook County, just in case you're wondering. And I want to say thank you to the board for allowing us to have our say. And I also want to say thank you to April, all of the library staff, for everything you have done in this community these last couple of years. And for the staff that has been here all ongoing. It's wonderful. That was the first thing we did when we moved here, was we came and we hadn't even moved into our house yet. And we came and got a library card. Thrilled, just thrilled. What I would say is, to those who would censor the LGBTQ+ books in the children's section of the library, I say to you, as a parent, you can absolutely control what your own children read. You can monitor, control, but you have no right to stop other people's children from accessing these books. Our community needs these books for our children who are asking and want to know more about their family structure and dynamics. These books can help them overcome a sense of isolation in their community. And I will say that if it goes towards option 1, that to me says it's coming from a place of hate. And I choose to believe there is more love in Prineville than that. Thank you.
Sholin.
I'm not very good at speaking in front of people. I got my first library card probably about 52 years ago. I could probably still find it in my dresser if I look for it. I did run across my second one. It's a white one the other day.
Vintage.
Right. My suspicion is if you had them in a category, we wouldn't have this meeting here today. If they would already been, rather than sprinkled amongst, so that they're being found as a surprise to somebody that's not looking for them. Having them in a category makes them easier to find for the people that are looking for them, easier to avoid for those that want to. And that's not just discrimination, that's just being a service to the whole community rather than just a group.
Katie Allen.
I want to support the library in second choice, and I want to say thank you to all the librarians and all the people who are hopefully keeping the library as status quo. I bring my 2 very young children to the story time, which we love, and we're only recent card holders because they're very little, but they don't know who they are yet, and I don't know who they are yet, and I want them to have opportunities to find these resources in the library without the stigma of looking at these books with any kind of fear, because there is fear in this community and in the United States at this moment. So I'm just throwing my support behind that. Appreciate you looking out for the rights of my children that are not able to represent themselves at this moment. Thank you.
And Reynolds.
Thank you. Thank you for listening tonight to both sides.
And could you hold it closer? Talk louder. We can't hear you.
Sorry. I just wanted to come and just say that the experience that I had coming to the library and getting a book, there was no indication. It wasn't a book. It was another form of media, that there was anything different. So I did not get the choice to choose for my 4-year-old what I would like to bring in or what I thought was age appropriate for her. And that is why I would lean towards and I would choose position number 1, because even though I was the parent screening the material, I didn't have a choice. It didn't give me any information on top. And even when I brought it into the library and presented it to the librarian and came in and talked, there was no indication on the media that we had checked out that there would be anything like that. So that would be why I support number 1, because they don't always, even when you're screening it, give you the choice as a parent to choose when it's age appropriate to bring things in for your child.
Is it? All the okay. You're gonna be. So, okay, that's where we are now. Public comment time is over. Do we want to this first? Oh, thank you. Okay, public comment time is over. Is it? Got it. So does the board, do you have feelings on this for now? Do you want to take any action or decide you're not taking any action based on the comments that we've had? Would be appropriate to vote here and now?
I would make a motion that we put this on the agenda for the next meeting, the vote.
We have a motion to put the decision with
Very thoughtful.
Cheyenne second. We have a motion to put this on the agenda for the next month's meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Aye. Motion fails for lack of. Okay. So, do we want to vote on it now? As to what option we're going to go with?
I'd like to motion to vote now. I'm second.
Oh, wait. Natalie, second by Deborah. Okay, we have a motion that we vote on the 2 proposals at this meeting. All those in favor of the motion?
favor to.
Yeah. Favor in the motion to vote.
Yes, I thought I said that. No.
You did.
Oh.
It's just long.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries by a vote of 3-2. Would anyone like to make a motion to suggest which proposal we are going to do, which is maintain the status quo or separate shelf books?
I'd like to move that we keep the status quo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to maintain the status quo with current library policy.
Proposal number 2.
Okay.
And reject the other proposal.
So you're making an amendment to mine?
No, I'm just clarifying.
Yes.
Do we have the amended motion or do we have just a clarified motion? The motion is to stay with proposal 2, which is maintain status quo. It was made by Deborah, seconded by Natalie. Are there any amendments to that motion? No? Okay, we'll vote on the motion to maintain status quo, which is proposal number 2. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
No. Okay, I vote aye, so it's 4-1. The motion passes to maintain status quo, which was proposal 2 on LGBTQ items remain interfiled as they are. Okay, that's done with. Now, the next item on the agenda are items for the next meeting, which is January 12th. Does the board have anything to that?
I think the thing that staff would just be bringing to the next meeting for an agenda item is a review of new educational items that we can use with the community in regards to this topic. So that will be available on the agenda next month.
New educational items on this topic. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else have anything we want to talk about before adjournment?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn. Board. Member, there's a motion to adjourn. It is now 7:45. The meeting is considered adjourned. Thank you all for being here.